Hello everyone, this is Manilyn Boko and I'm going to talk about the Canada Indigenous peoples. Let's check the overview of the Indigenous peoples in Canada. So there are three groups of Indigenous peoples in Canada. They are the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations. Inuit live in the northern region of Canada in Inuit Nunavut as their homeland, while Métis is a combination of European and Indigenous descent, mostly live in the provinces of Prairie and Ontario. And First Nations are a regional dweller of Canada, living in the south of the Arctic areas. 5% of Canadian population are Indigenous, according to the Statistics of Canada year 2021. And Indigenous peoples in Canada are covered by Section 35 of the Constitution Act 1982 that talks about the reconciliation of Indigenous people and the Crown, which work cooperatively to establish and maintain a mutually respectful framework for living together. So this image here are Inuit women in their gala dress, which is the katik tali. Now we're going to talk about the history. Indigenous peoples are the first people in Canada. Complex social, political, economic, and cultural systems already exist even before Europeans came. With foreign settlements, traditional living were affected. Colonial practices and policies was introduced to Indigenous peoples. These practices and policies have lots of impacts to the Indigenous peoples. So, what are the impacts of colonization? Indian Act. With the creation of Indian Act, this results to suppression the indigenous living in many aspects such as language, religion, culture, and even the right to vote. While the residential schools resulted students to grow up away from families, resulting to unable to familiarize the indigenous cultures and experiences. They are unable to practice also the following: to speak their native language, the indigenous spirituality, wear the traditional regalia, potlatches and other traditional ceremonies, and traditional names used also. This image here shows the potlatch, which is one of the traditional ceremonies. Government of Canada's relationship with Indigenous peoples. 1. All relations with Indigenous peoples need to be based on the recognition and implementation of their right to self-determination, including the inherent right to self-government. 2. Reconciliation is a fundamental purpose of Section 35 of the Constitution Act 1982. 3. The honor of the Crown guides the conduct of the Crown in all of its dealings with Indigenous peoples. 4. Indigenous self-government is part of Canada's evolving system of cooperative federalism and distinct orders of government. 5. Treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements between Indigenous peoples and the Crown have been and are intended to be acts of reconciliation based on mutual recognition and respect. 6. Meaningful engagement with Indigenous peoples aims to secure their free, prior and informed consent when Canada proposes to take actions which impact them and their rights on their lands, territories, and resources. 7. Respecting and implementing rights is essential, and in any infringement of Section 35, rights must by law meet a high threshold of justification, which includes Indigenous perspective and satisfy the Crown's fiduciary obligations. 8 is the reconciliation and self-government require a renewed fiscal relationship developed in collaboration with the indigenous nations that promotes a mutually supportive climate for economic partnership and resource development. 9 is the reconciliation with an ongoing process that occurs in the context of evolving indigenous crown relationship. A distinction-based approach is needed to ensure that the unique rights, interests, and circumstances of the First Nations, the Métis Nation, and Inuit are acknowledged, affirmed, and implemented. What are the importance of teaching the North to college studies, personal, professional contexts? In college studies, it is to create awareness among students about life in the North. In the article of Christensen 2013, she mentioned that their pen pals from Toronto during primary school asked surprising questions about the North, such as if they live in igloos or travel by dog team. So it is important that students are taught about the indigenous peoples while they are still studying to avoid stereotypes like this. For personal, it is significant to understand role of the indigenous peoples in shaping the modern North and the rough experiences of their ancestors. Part Z 2023 discussed that the implementation of the Indian Act, the Residential School Act of Racism, mixed with acts of racism and segregation, have had a huge negative outcome to the health, ways of life, and socio-economic well-being of indigenous peoples. So this could also be applicable not only to indigenous peoples but also to other people because as we all know, we are living in a multicultural society, and it is essential that we uh, and respect each other's existence. Regarding professional, as Christensen 2013 said on page 13 of her article, growing up as a non-indigenous person in a northern city like Yellowknife is not the same as growing up being in the same city. So to be able to understand people, we have to put ourselves to their shoes. As a as a health care worker, I must learn more about my clients and their needs to avoid bias and racism. So it is the same concept with the Canada relations to indigenous people. In general, it is important for me to respect all my clients and treat them with fairness despite their race, culture, and beliefs in order to deliver a better healthcare service to them. That's all. Thank you. These are my references.